All right. Good evening, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Asafo Shaka Sekou, and I'm co-hosting this panel today with my brother, also a founding member of the Barter and Build think tank, Brother Dale. Um, and today we'll be discussing the dismantling the punishment bureaucracy, or what we commonly call the criminal justice system. And the uh, we have joining us today the Free Horry County Bail Fund. So if we could have everyone introduce themselves, we'll go down the line, starting with Jennifer, if you could.
Sure. Yes. Hi. I'm Jennifer Slosher. I have been on the show a couple of times. Thank you for having us back. I'm a professor of sociology and criminology, and we've been working on this bail fund that we're super excited about. So thank you for being here.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ebony Hughes. I'm an entrepreneur and also a civil rights activist. Appreciate the invitation for being here. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Deontay Winchester. I am an entrepreneur, clinical social worker, certified master life coach, and a community activist. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all.
I guess to me, I'm Bob Gencott. I'm a professor of sociology and criminology, and I'm happy to be here. I've never done a podcast web live, never. So.
All right, Val.
Hi, I'm Valerie Evans, and hopefully you all can hear me and see me. I have left the Horry County Schools. Sorry, I've just left the Horry County Schools District, and I have been working on my own, trying to establish a program called Saving Our Sons and Protecting Our Princesses, and it's under the Purpose and Destiny Family School Community Resource Network.
Dale, you want to introduce yourself, sir?
Sure. My name is Dale Hamilton. I'm one of the founding members of the Barter and Build think tank.
All right. We want to thank you all for joining us today for this very important discussion. And so we want to start with an important announcement. Jen, if you would like to make the announcement now about the organization.
I would love to. I have been waiting a long time to make this announcement, so I'm really, really excited about this. So tonight we are officially launching the Free Horry County Bail Fund. FREE is an acronym for Funding, Release, Empowering Equity. And we are a community nonprofit organization. We are a sponsored organization of 7 Dimensions, which is a 501c3 here in the area that does amazing work. And we have been working hard to get this this fund set up and ready to go. We have really wanted to focus on, leveling the playing field in Horry County for people who can't afford to bail themselves out of jail, and to get them back home, back to their communities, back to work, back to their families, and so that they can take care of their responsibilities just like anyone else who has been arrested but happens to be able to afford their bail. And so we want to be able to provide that assistance to our neighbors and friends, and we have found some pathways to do that. And so I'm really, really excited. Hopefully tonight we'll be able to talk about some of the barriers to freedom, to equity, and we'll be able to talk about how the cash bail system works and why it is both classist and racist. And so bail funds like this are very much needed. So I'm really excited to be here and to finally be able to announce it. We have a website. It is horrybailfund.org. If you're not from here, Horry is spelled Horry. I don't know why, but it is. So it's HORRY bailfund.org. And you'll see a lot of educational materials on there, a lot of links, a lot of resources, and then a place to request bail assistance for people who have family members who may be in jail right now. You can request that we go bail them out. And there's also a donation link. So please check that out when you're able. But thank you for the platform and for being here for our announcement.
All right, so what I want to do now is I want to go. Well, let me also say that in the name of full disclosure, I am also a member of the Horry County Bail Fund. I'm also a member of the board. So I just wanted to get that out there as well. But what I want us to do is go to each person and kind of just explain why you felt it was important to become a part of the Bail Fund, and what the Bail Fund means to you, and the work you intend to, the agenda you tend to have accomplished through the Bail Fund. So we'll start with Ebony.
So first of all, I'm really excited about the grand launch of the Bail Fund, and it's sort of a long story about how I got started with the Bail Fund. But ever since I was a child, we read and heard stories about civil rights activists in the 60s and how, they'd be out protesting and marching and for simple things such as voting rights and things that all of us, rights that we should have, but in reality, there were laws and policies put in place to restrict those types of freedoms to certain demographics of people, mostly Black and brown people. And so what I saw was that they went to jail, and it was an honor because they needed, that was just part of it. And so moving forward, I never understood how being in jail, especially if you don't have the money to bail yourself out, can affect a person. And I've learned of people over the years that lost their jobs. That was the main thing. So when someone called me up and introduced me to the idea that we could help people in that same situation, I mean, I'm all for it. So I think it's a great thing.
Okay, Deontay, go ahead.
Well, for me, paying bail is essentially buying one's freedom. And this is true for both individuals who are guilty and innocent. We like to think that everyone that's in jail is guilty, but that's just not the case. The cash bail system criminalizes poverty because people who are unable to afford that bail are detained, and they wait there for their trial for weeks, months, and in some rare cases, even years. And as Ebony alluded to, these individuals can lose their jobs, they can lose custody of their children. It's a large, a whole lot of things that can happen. It's a spiral of events that can go down because these individuals are held without bail. So for me, it's no surprise that individuals who look like me are more likely to be jailed, and they are more likely to be affected by poverty. So, and for me, it was a no-brainer to get behind this cause because I'm always one to empower the disenfranchised, and I'm just happy to be a part of something that's trying to make such a good change that's well overdue and well needed in our community.
Okay. Bob and Val.
Go ahead, Val.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, for me, it's actually a win-win situation. I have a couple of things going on here. This is crazy.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Okay, so Val's experiencing some technical difficulties while she's getting that together. Bob, do you mind, sir?
Sure. I was involved, well, I am involved with the bail fund in a separate county, and I brought this to Jenny, and we were talking about it, working with students, and the bell went off. Why don't we just start one here? And, you know, we had both seen the damage that cash bail does to individuals, families, communities. And like Ebony and Deontay said, you know, it's wrong on so many levels. And this is one way that I hope we can actually make some change, and can't beat that.
All right, thank you for joining us again, Val. I hope you got your technical difficulties straightened out. Are you able to? Can you hear us? Okay, so she's still having some technical difficulties. So, like I said, while she's working on that, I'll So, what my goal in this group is to really fight against the punishment bureaucracy and you know, bail, the abolition of bail, and educating people about the racist and classist and predatory aspects of the cash bail system is an extremely vital aspect, an extremely vital part of kind of dismantling the system of mass incarceration. So mass incarceration, or the punishment bureaucracy, is a descendant, I believe is a descendant, if you will, of slavery, the system of slavery, the system of Jim Crow, the creation of the ghetto, the prison, or the modern system of mass incarceration is the fourth peculiar institution that has been employed to coerce and control Black bodies and maintain a system of white supremacy. And our goal, what I would like for our goal to be, as well as what everyone else has already said, is to educate the public to build a movement, at least locally, around abolishing or overturning the more egregious aspects of the punishment bureaucracy, including bail. Bail is, you know, the contribution that we are making, but we hope that this small contribution will lead to and be a part of a broader movement toward the elimination of this egregious system. So you talked about the website. What are some ways that our viewers, the people who are watching now, would be able to support? I'm going to put up a link for the Venmo and the Cash App. So local people, and people, well, not just local people, but, you know, people in general, you know, they're curious about ways that they can work toward, you know, what we're working on here in Horry County. They can, I suppose, form their own bail fund, what have you. What are some of the ways that we had to, you know, Jen, if you could explain to our audience some of the ways that, you know, things that had to be done in order to form a bail fund. I'll put it that way.
Okay, totally, yes. So it you know, it seems, I think, I don't want to say it seems easy to start a bail fund, but we definitely ran into things that I was not anticipating. And so it was, there was a lot that goes into creating something like this. But the main thing is that this and other, you know, community nonprofits aren't often sustainable without community support and local support. We have like maybe $100 in our bail fund right now. We are just starting. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is in Horry County specifically, the average amount of bail overall is $2,700. And that's for one person. That's to bail one person out. It's over $2,000 just to get a single person out. And so it is very expensive. Bail is expensive. And we obviously aren't bail bonds people. So we're not charging fees. We're not requiring them to pay us back. We are doing this on a volunteer basis, but the funds have to come from donations and from the community. And so it is essential that we, get as much support as we can for this. Otherwise, I don't know how far we can go with it. So I think the first step in this for a lot of us is educating people on what bail is in the first place. It's, when you think about something every day for so long, you start to forget that other people aren't also thinking about that same thing and don't also know about it. And so you just kind of assume that everybody also knows. But bail is literally just an amount that's set by a judge that allows you to wait for your day in court at home. That is it. Bail doesn't mean you're guilty. It doesn't mean you're not guilty. It doesn't mean that you have even committed a crime yet. It just means that you are well off enough to be allowed to go home while you wait for your day in court. And so when I can't remember who it was, I think it was Deontay was talking about the criminalization of poverty. That's exactly what the cash bail system is. It is an extension of this concept of the criminalization of poverty. We are criminalizing poor people by literally incarcerating them for not having money.
Right.
And so that is a system that is vastly unequal. And so we as community leaders, as educators, as parents in Horry County see it as our duty to do what we can to even that playing field and to help as many people as we can at the local level. I mean, these are our neighbors. These are the people you go to church with. These are the people you see at work, who you may know, who you may be related to, who find themselves entangled in the criminal justice system and deserve as fair a chance as people who can afford to get out of jail. So I think our number one goal here is gonna be a consistent overall educational campaign. I think education is going to be our biggest push here. Yes, we need donations. Yes, we need money to be able to run the bail fund, but we're not paying ourselves. We're all working on a volunteer basis, and we have very low overhead because we're working from cell phones and computers. So every donation will go directly to bailing somebody out. That's exactly what it will go to. So education, I think, is important, and then also making sure that we have community support. So we want to be here to answer questions, and I think that's also a big thing. Is that if people have questions, we're the people that can answer those questions for you. So please let us know if there's something you want to know more about.
I'd also like to piggyback on what Jennifer said in regards to people are penalized for being poor, what it boils down to, and it really reminds you of a modern day form of enslaving people. Because what it's saying is if you don't have the money to get yourself out, whether you're innocent or guilty, because it hadn't been proven at that point, you either can afford to get yourself out, and if you can't, guess what? We make money off of you, just like how they did with enslaved people. Yes. You have to think about it. When people stay in jail every single day, these prison systems, jail systems, they get money, and it's a money fuel. And there are jails and prisons going up. And the thing about it is that some of them are privately owned. So some people have made a living off of this system. And we see time and time again in the system on television, somebody just got out of jail after 10 years or 15 years and come to find out they didn't even do it. But what sparked the thing in the beginning, they couldn't afford bail in many times. And not only could they not afford bail, they could not afford to have bail to be out so that they can iron out everything they needed to with an attorney. So without the representation that they needed, and that's also going to be another additional barrier to these individuals that get in jail, that they don't have the knowledge. So, and then they don't have a representative to help them defend themselves, and they end up in jail. So we need to go ahead and stop this. We realize that bail funding is a temporary thing. because we also need to be working on policy change at the same time. But right now, to be able to help those people that we can, especially when you have people who are in jail over something minor, like something minor that they really probably shouldn't even be in jail for to start off with.
Like possession of drugs.
Right. Yeah. Right. And then, or even the guy that I read about in California, lifetime sentence over stealing a candy bar. Well, he had mental health issues. He was a veteran, and all it took was that third strike. He was trying to get a pack of chips and a Butterfinger, and that sent him to prison for life, which is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
You both make great points. And something else that we probably don't think about a lot is, there are studies out there that indicate that an individual who comes to court wearing a suit with a paid attorney is looked at more favorably than an individual who comes to court in an orange jumpsuit with a public defender. So it's bigger than just bail. These individuals are at a disadvantage when it's time for their day in court, when it finally happens as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
So we're thank you all for that. And I have the Venmo at Horry Bail Fund and the Cash App $sign Horry Bail Fund down at the bottom of the screen. Hope everyone can see that. And we ask that you donate and support the work that we are doing in Horry County as far as bail is concerned. Now, so I guess the first question to kind of start off the part of the discussion regarding, I guess, broader aspects of the punishment bureaucracy or the criminal justice system. I guess I'll ask this, and Deontay, I know you have other obligations, and you'll be leaving us a little bit early, so I'll start with you. Could you speak with us about the role that the criminal justice system has played historically and or contemporary in the oppression of marginalized groups?
Oh.
So, would anyone else like to answer that question?
They play a huge role. Let's start with laws. Let's start from the beginning before anybody supposedly committed a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Rules really were intended to be enforced on certain people. So let's say, for example, somebody was speeding. Somebody who is Black usually policed harder. Somebody who lives in a poor area, the rules are enforced harder.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I won't even say the name of this politician. Had a meeting with him last week, and what he said was people who were in marginalized community, he basically said verbatim, need to be policed more harder than anybody else. So you have folks walking around who are in office who think this particular way. So then when you start with laws and they are policed on certain groups of people more heavily than the next, and they're already marginalized, then they go into jail. They're not able to bail themselves out. Then they're not able to get proper representation. And it's this on and on cycle. And then not only does it affect the person who's in jail, can you imagine the children without fathers, the children without mothers, the job loss, and everything that goes along with the person being in jail.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would say politically. Hope I answered the question correctly about policy.
But I mean, you said that the last part, especially about about children being without fathers and families being without, husbands and things like that. And I think that's a good point, because often we see this idea of excessive individualism being targeted as the cause of that people will have this rhetoric that says, well, it's because people are irresponsible. It's because they're they need to be better fathers, and they need to be better husbands, and they need to be better community members. They shouldn't be out there doing that if they don't want to lose their families. But that's putting an individualistic view on a systemic problem. And so we're blaming individuals when really we should be looking at the system as a whole to see and understand why certain people, why people of color in particular, are getting arrested more frequently, why they are incarcerated longer, why their bails are on average higher than other people's, and not look at it as an individual failing, but as this huge systemic problem. And but again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I will say it every time somebody puts a camera in my face. The criminal justice system isn't broken. It is functioning exactly as it is intended to function. This is intentional in order to continue to oppress people. So I catch myself when I say that it's broken or that it's a problem. It is a problem, but it's was built this way. It was built to work exactly as it's working right now. And when people in power are able to make people who are not in power, people who are already disenfranchised or marginalized, point the finger at each other, it takes the blame off of those who are in power. It takes the blame off of this racist and classist system that is the entirety of the criminal justice system. So I'm glad you brought that point up. We tend to believe that it is an individual failing of a person if they were arrested for something, when in reality, there were factors at work in a system that this person became entangled in before they were even born, like waiting for this moment in their lives. And so that's something I think that needs to be discussed and talked about more than it is.
I completely agree with you, Jennifer. It's a cycle that, we're talking about bail, but it just affects so many different things within the community, and it just hurts the people who are already hurting prior to that. I've talked to different people in the community. I mean, I grew up in what people would consider the hood, and you talk to folks and they work a regular job, but then they may not have the best job, as far as an income. And some people sell marijuana, which they need to go ahead and make legal to start off with. And something happens, you get busted. A lot of the time it starts off where people were just really trying to provide for their family, which again is a vicious cycle for the community.
So Bob, I wanna bring you into this. Same question to you, but I want to also ask something. I want to ask. We know who doesn't benefit. We know who the targets are of this system. But who does benefit?
Well, I think historically, going back to 1700s, we had the Marshal Service started. That part of their main job was to police the frontier. Native folks, escaped slaves.
Mm-hmm.
That was the purpose, to protect the white folks, right? The slave patrols in the South clearly targeting Black folks. The Slave Act, the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793. The goal is that white folks will capture, return slaves. That didn't work well. They read it again, 1850 Fugitive Slave Act, that essentially deputized white men to capture, hold, return slaves. So it's pretty darn clear that non-white folks are being targeted, and white folks benefit, whether it's keeping their land safe from native folks or returning their slaves or property, right? Clearly the benefits there. Also, there's the jobs. Policing was absolutely white until, not that long ago. Good jobs, city jobs, state jobs, federal job benefits, all that good stuff for white folks. Well, white men, right? So the benefit just keeps going back to one side. So the harm the harm to the black folks benefits the white folks. And you see this over and over. And that was one of my big pushes to try to help the community that I live in here, that if we can help a few kids who get stuck, right? Help just a few and begin. That's something that is not being done now.
So I'm gonna bring Dale in if he has any questions or comments or just anything he would like to say.
Yeah, actually, I do have a few questions, but to go along with the flow of the conversation with us talking about, I have a question about the politicians. When we're talking about policies, when policies came up, my first thought was, are there any politicians that support your organization? If so, how? If there's none, are there politicians that are around? Are they working against you?
That's a good question. And I don't, unfortunately, think we can answer that right now because we just launched it today. So we have not yet heard from any politicians whether or not they support or don't support what we're doing. But hey, if any politicians are watching, contact us. We would love to hear from you. But no, we have not heard from anybody. But again, we're so new, so I think that's part of the problem there. Bob, sorry.
If I could, I think part of the problem with discussing bail funds and politics now is when you start to talk about closing down jails, prisons, anything like that, the discussion automatically goes to these extreme folks. So we need to let folks out of jail. But then people argue, well, what about serial killers, right? Well, that stirs up folks against it automatically. Instead of the masses who are in prison for 5 years and less. Is that necessary? Are they the problem, or is there something else happening? I think the idea of a prison industrial complex. There's so much money wrapped up in that, and that's jobs, which turns into votes. So it's much easier, regardless of a politician's personal view, to cater to those aspects, to make sure that we have jobs, supplying jails, prisons, all that. That's where the votes are, and they're concerned about their election, I think, much less than serving their constituency.
Also, the other thing that we don't talk about, and I don't want to quote the percentage because I have forgotten what the percentage is, but there's a percentage of Black folks who are locked up, and I'm gonna also include Hispanics. And when you start talking about policy, and Bob just mentioned about votes, those people can't vote. So you lose that whole percentage of the population. And now we're talking about things right now, such as redistricting. And we just had the census and things of that nature. Even with census, if a person's locked up in that community, that takes away dollars that could have been allocated to that community, because that money then goes again to the prison or the jail system there. So that this also is a big thing that fuels this issue that we have when it comes down to policy. It's a lot in there. And like Bob said, down to the wire, we can talk all day and night about it. It has everything to do with money and protection. And I would say even white supremacy. That's a way to keep Black people, brown people, Hispanic people, and poor white people in their place.
Jen, were you about to say something?
No. I just wanted to also just mention that that when obviously racist laws and policies have been implemented in the past, like the Fugitive Slave Act and things like that literally said what they were in their name. Once politicians recognized that maybe that wasn't going to work to be that blatantly racist anymore, they just had similar policies. They just changed the name to make it sound more palatable. So like, 3 strikes laws or war on drugs, they're literally the exact same policies and the same laws. They just sound a little better, and they don't sound quite as overtly racist. And so I think people in general really should be looking into more who they're voting for and what their politicians have supported, what bills they've sponsored, what they're doing, where they're getting their money, and see who you're really voting for, and what those laws are really doing. And I think sometimes that's easy to forget when we put a nice finish on something so that it doesn't look as egregious as it really is.
Also, if I can say one thing to add to what Jennifer just said, and I want to use the George Floyd case, because it's a really good case and everybody is pretty familiar with what happened in that situation. So when George Floyd was murdered by the cop, had people not got in the streets and protested, I don't think that they would have punished that cop. Okay, that's the truth and the reality of it. Bail funds have become more popular now, I think, and like I was talking about before, civil rights activists in the 60s, you got civil rights activists now, and they will stand out in the streets, and people are put in jail and for protesting peacefully many times. And so there are a lot of people that have gone to jail for protesting. So having bail funds like this also helps those individuals who are willing to be on the forefront of the civil rights movements. That's there to help them as well, which is really interesting. It's sort of rhetorical, actually, when you start thinking about it. People are out protesting for civil rights, get locked up, and then they may need bail money to get out.
I do have a follow-up question. When you reference other bail fund organizations, were there some that you guys looked at when you decided to build this one? Maybe even give them like a shout out, if you could. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But I think in setting up something like this, it's good to hear if you guys use a model that could be used in other communities.
Is that me? Are
Yes.
we pointing at me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Good question. Yeah. So one of the very first things that I did was reach out to other bail funds that were local in their areas. Right. There is not another bail fund in Horry County, and so this is the first and the only, as far as I know. And so I didn't really have a model to go on. And so I said, well, let's just ask people who've done it before. One of the ones that really helped me was the Soda City Bail Fund in Columbia. And they organized as a result of the protests 2 summers ago. And they have not been around very long, but they were extremely helpful in helping guide some of our principles. They recommended that we join the National Bail Fund Network. And so I spoke with people who are part of the national network, and they had a wealth of resources for us to educate us on the issues of bail and how to start a good bail fund. So shout out for sure to Soda City and to their work. They have been extremely influential in helping us. But honestly, a lot of it has been trial and error. And a lot of it we're still working out on a day-to-day basis. And we are learning as we go. And I think that's one of the most important things, is setting a solid foundation and setting yourself up to be successful, and making sure that you get your own selves out of your way, get roadblocks out of your way, but then also to remain open to learning and changing and maneuvering as needed as an organization when new information comes to light or new needs come about in our community. And so I think that's a strength of ours, is that we can be very flexible and are very willing to learn the best ways of doing things.
So I want to bring the conversation now towards, there was already a mention of the prison industrial complex. So I want to speak for a few moments on that. So when people think of the prison industrial complex, they think of automatically the privatizing of prisons, which is a thing, but it's much worse than that, isn't it? What are some of the more insidious aspects that people may not understand when it comes to the prison industrial complex? Whether the prison is a private prison or a non-private prison.
It goes from end to end, from architectural firms that specialize in designing these. They're making money off of it. From the selling and installing the doors, locks, all the construction. There are specialists who do just that. To what kind of beds or slabs do you put into the cells? What kind of glass do you install? The food that they eat, care packages you can buy to send to someone that you care for, all specialized. Clothing, guns, all the equipment inside. They have specialized toilets, plumbing, everything. So from end to end, from the building itself to every product that a prisoner might use, end to end, it's a business, and it's all around keeping people inside. If a prison is empty, it's useless. You got to keep it filled, private, public, whichever. And that's the insidious part of this, is that now there's jobs, and those jobs spend things in every community, places to eat, gas stations, stores. So the community needs that cash. And so there's a vested interest from the community in those jobs based on keeping people inside, locked up. And it's going to continue. There's no end to it. How do you stop it? Right? Communities will fight to get that new jail built in their town because of the money that it brings in, which is horrible when you think about what we're doing. And the private side is just uglier yet. But I don't know, Jenny, Ebony, anybody want to?
I mean, I completely agree with you. All I can say is you're 100% right. I'll just say right here, right in Georgetown County, I think they were thinking about adding maybe 100 beds to the current building. And the proposal is, well, by the time we add these 100 beds, and by the time we do upgrades, which, they're going to send the bid to their buddies. Okay. So by the time they do all of this and say, by the time we add all the beds and the upgrades, we just build a whole new facility, because then we're going to just need somewhere else for those individuals to go. So guess what? It's on the table. We went from upgrades to they're just building a whole new one now. So you're right on point with that. And that's how it works. And they're going to send all that money from the construction part of the jail all the way to the very end of it. And there goes your cycle.
So there's another aspect of the generation of revenue, really off the backs of working class people of color and poor people of color, with the fines and fees as well, the implementation and imposition of fines and fees. One economist calls it wealth stripping. and I know the ACLU has been dealing with this, even here in Conway, South Carolina, is one of the worst when it comes to fines and fees. And the ACLU is working on a case in Lexington County here in South Carolina as well. Any of you have any comments about that? Any comments you want to add?
I think really quick, it's just part of the same process. You know, if you or I get fined $50, we can probably pay it easily, get mad about it, move on. But that's a tank of gas. And if you need your car to get to work and back, pick up your kids, whatever, that $50 for some folks is a lot. And you start getting the tying together race and economic class. We know what's there and who gets harmed. It's patently clear, unfortunately.
But also, go ahead. I'm sorry. This would have been completely off target, I think. But what I was about to add was, it's also amazing to me because I began to start looking at when a person goes before a judge during their bond hearing. You know, judges have a certain range of that they can charge for something. Let's say if it was a burglary, for example, simple burglary, it can be anywhere. Let's say, for example, $1,000 to $5,000. How do you decide whether it's worth $1,000 or whether it's worth $5,000? And what I also noticed is that the bonds that they give Black individuals are usually on the higher side. You know, I've seen it even with some kids, you know, diverse children, teenagers get into trouble. They all were in the same place at the same time. And when each of these individuals go up for bond hearings, the Black kids get a higher bond than sometimes the white children do. So that's just also something to... Go ahead, Jen.
Oh, I'm muted. There we go. You're 100% right. And I have statistics if anybody would like them. Okay. And these are specific to Horry County, by the way. So in Horry County, the average bail, hang on, let me get my thing open. The average bail for, let's see, for white people. So first of all, we can talk about the problem in how race is coded and written down by arresting officers. Bob and I have been doing some research, and we actually had to file a Freedom of Information Act request in order to get the data on bookings and arrests for the last, how many years was it? 5 years that we have in Horry County. And so we asked and we didn't get it. And so we finally said, okay, we'll compel you to give us this public information. So they finally gave it to us, and almost exclusively, the arresting officer would write down only 2 races when someone was arrested, white or Black. And we saw a lot of inconsistencies in that, where then it would list someone's nationality or where they're from as like Mexico, for instance, and that person would be labeled either white or Black. And so they only really had two races that they included there. So the data itself is problematic, but from what we have, I can tell you that white individuals' average amount of bail is $2,100 in Horry County, and Black individuals' average bail in Horry County is $3,500.
See, right there.
It's real. It's numbers. It's statistics. And you know, again, it's when you're so immersed in this, it's like, how does everyone not know this? But people don't know it. And I would hope that hearing this makes people as angry about it as we are. Let me also just give you another statistic while I'm in my little data set here. The let's see, average days incarcerated for white individuals in Horry County is 30 days. If you were classified as white in this data set, you are incarcerated for an average of 30 days. And for people who are classified as Black, the average length of incarceration is 46 days. Yeah. So it's in the numbers. And this again, really, I think speaks to the need in our immediate community for things like bail funds. For us, I don't expect us to be able to bail out 100 people a week or even a month, but we're going to do what we can, because this should upset everyone. I think it's all something we all knew anyway, but just having the numbers on that really is important. So thank you for bringing that point up, Ebony, because I love a chance to talk about statistics.
I have a follow-on question. For your organization, or even at the national level, is there a focus to reduce the fund amount, or even just eliminate the bail fund, the bail number overall? Especially when you bring up the statistics, like quick in my head, it sounds like there's a 50% difference, an increase of like between 2,000 to over 3,000, white versus Black. Is there a focus to say, well, what can we do to lower the amount so that when you are able to raise money, you got bail out more people than just you raise just enough to bail out one?
I don't think that we have a method. What we need to have happen is for the magistrates who set the bails, they have wide latitude. When COVID hit, they began to send people home on a personal recognizance bond, come back or else, right? So they can make it zero, right? And I don't know who the magistrates are. I can't call them and say, hey, can you knock down this bond for this person? They're not going to listen to me, I don't think. But I think that, but they have the ability to knock it to zero, and maybe only for certain crimes, but they can do it because they just did it for the last year and a half.
I will also add that the big pushes across the country are not to lower the bail amounts of people of color, but to eliminate the cash bail system altogether. So it is an abolitionist movement, I think, more than anything else. And some states have absolutely abolished cash bail, and they have seen, a good return on that decision, where people are arrested less frequently, people are back in their communities, people are able to, continue to work. The unemployment rates have changed, and so it is possible. And I think that's what the big push is, and that's also, I think, what we advocate for as a bail fund is. I would love to get to a point where we are no longer needed, where our services are not needed because we have abolished cash bail. I don't know. I don't know if or when that's going to happen, but we as a group will continue to work for that.
One more question. Has there been an economic impact study to the adverse effects of bail to communities? Like, how much money is hemorrhaged when you have a bail type system where that people cannot afford? What are the downstream effects of that? Like, how does that affect not just at the individual level? Okay, this person loses a job. How does it affect like a community, with the community actually losing income / wealth, whatever, things of value, because this person is incarcerated?
Well, I'll tell you straight out of the gate right there, people lose, people talk about equality, but equality, you can't make someone like you. You can't make someone love you. So the playing ground, the even playing field will be equity. So sometimes what happens, and people make these deals all the time with bail bondsmen, they get with these bail bondsmen, and if it's a huge amount, sometimes they will put up land. They'll put up a home or put up a car or just valuable things to these bail bonds, and they'll take it because the bail bondman understands that if this person defaults, that's acquisition for them. This person loses some sort of equity that they could use for generational wealth or whatever they needed down the line. And so people feel like they're put in a situation where their family members or they have to do that, and it puts them in even more pressure down the line for trying to meet bail.
I can't answer the question as well as I would like about have there been economic studies that have really studied this aspect of it. I know that there have been. I just don't. It's not my area that I usually do research in, and so I don't know what they are. But I do know that studies and research do show that that bail negatively affects communities in that people aren't able to go back and go to their jobs and do all of that. I will say too, one very surprising area where the research is extremely lacking is actually scientific scholarly research on bail funds. There's hardly any real research on bail funds and whether or not they're good for communities, whether people are benefiting from them. And that is a little surprising to me. So Bob and I are kind of going to try to work on that part of it as well, as to introduce some of this information to the scholarly literature so that hopefully it will help inform policy in some way.
And I think along those economic lines, if in South Carolina, juveniles generally are not in jail. Any adult can sign for them and get them basically right out, so they don't spend time. So the people in jail are going to be 18 and over. If there's a hypothetical 100 people in jail, that's 100 potential employees not at their job, right? So you start seeing the economic impact that way. I don't have the numbers for you, but that's 100 families that are missing out. And that number just grows geometrically. Just when that inmate calls home just to say hi, the calls are what, $4 or $5 for a minute, right? I don't know if anybody's ever had those calls, and it just, that harms the family more, and it just grows and grows and grows. But I don't have the numbers.
So can we speak for a moment about the with the mentioning of young the youth that's provides a good segue for us to discuss the school to prison pipeline. Now I want to I know we've been having some technical difficulties, but I want to share my screen for a second. Let me see here. I hope this won't completely blow up in my face. So this was a tweet. Can everyone see that? Sorry.
We can't see it on this.
Bear with us for a moment. I apologize. Okay. If not, I'll just read the tweet. Okay.
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay. So this is from the ACLU. You notice the date, October 8th, 2021. Breaking, a South Carolina court just struck down a disorderly conduct law that allowed students, disproportionately students of color, to be criminalized for normal adolescent behavior like cursing. Law enforcement and schools can't use these laws to criminalize students. Okay, and it's with that I want to offer a shout out to a young man whom I admire greatly. Was one of the plaintiffs in that case. His name is Draquan DeWitt, and I also want to mention his mother, Tamika Hemingway. And we worked with them, and it was a struggle, and he had been falsely accused and charged with disturbing schools and what have you. And this was a struggle over a number of years. And I'm happy to say that we're getting some measure of justice at the end of a years-long struggle, either dealing with the Horry County school system, the Horry County Police Department, even the courts throughout the state that we're getting, that Draquan and the other plaintiffs in this case are getting some measure of justice. And those because of this ruling, those their records will be expunged. Okay, so we're thankful for that. So speak to us, anyone who wants to begin, about the the aspects of the school to prison pipeline. How does it manifest itself? How does the mass incarceration system manifest itself in public schooling?
That's you, Bob.
All right. Couple things that we got to think about with the school to prison pipeline is the use of police as school resource officers. In South Carolina, a police officer goes to the Criminal Justice Training Academy for 8 whole weeks. Then they're a cop, right? If they're going to be doing a school resource officer job, there's some additional training. But through this training, they are told to enforce the law. They're told what the laws are. Laws like assault. They are placed in a school, and where a minor scuffle, the police see, with their eyes, they see an assault. What do you do when you see an assault? Arrest. That's what police do, right? So you bring them into the school, you're going to get that. They may, they're not there to counsel kids. That's a different job. They're there to police the school. So from 3rd grade, whatever, that's what they do. Now they may train them to try to see a minor fight from a bigger fight, but I think the case that you just brought up there, Damien, you have kids singing popular songs in the halls, right? A lot of the popular music is aggressive, is loud, and uses words that the older generation doesn't want to hear. So then they call the cops on the student, like the quote you just put up. In years gone by, they didn't have, they weren't allowed to have certain words in the songs, like when I was going to school. So that issue didn't even exist. Now it's all over the place, and it's just kids singing songs, but it's being heard and perceived of as this negative thing, and they're swearing, and there's and leading to the police officer being called in. And we see, as you can expect, a distinct, clear overrepresentation of non-white students being brought to the jail instead of the principal's office. There was just a horrible case it was on NPR and was reported by some other outlets too.
Yep.
ProPublica out of Tennessee, I believe. You read that too. Just terrible. And
Horrible.
and the overrepresentation of kids being brought to the police station or jail, and then having to be bailed out, signed out by their parents, or the police bringing them back into school, escorting them back in, shows everybody, the students, staff, this student is being escorted by the cops. Bad kid. What do you want? And then hopefully somebody might reach out for that to that kid. But it just starts that chain moving from school into prison eventually.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, NPR, ETV, PBS, those are my stations. And I literally just heard about this story yesterday in Tennessee. What they're saying is that this particular county, the county that you're talking about, is Rutherford County in Tennessee. They arrest more children than any other county in their state. So overall, in Tennessee, only 5% of children who were referred to juvenile court are detained. But in Rutherford County, that figure is 48%, and most of them are Black. So as it pertains to the children, there were 11 of them recently that were detained by the police. That means they were detained, taken in, and that included a 5-year-old, and I forgot another child who were not taken in, but otherwise 11 students, 4 of them girls, were taken in. Guess why? Not because they caused the fight. It was because they stood back and watched the fight, and they were arrested for not participating to actively break that fight up, which is ridiculous. That's an adult type law that a child wouldn't know about. And what I've always been taught, if there's a fight, don't get involved, because I have seen people get involved in trying to break a fight up and they get in trouble. These kids were standing around watching it and they were detained for that. So it's crazy. But to get back to the SRO situation, there's no evidence that having SROs in schools actually makes schools safer. There's no evidence that that's the first thing. The other thing that I've noticed, and this is in my area, specifically in Georgetown, what we've noticed is that school districts and police departments have I'm not saying it right, a memorandum of understanding. And so what happens is there's not a real cohesive way of deciphering school. There's a gray area of how do you police school rules, and at what point do they enforce adult rules with these children? And so that's not always clear. Now, I was in a meeting with the superintendent, and his thing is, to his knowledge, there is an understanding, but there's a difference in having an understanding on paper and that actually being enforced in reality. And what we've seen in this district right here alone is that in the Black schools, there's children are being policed harder than students, let's say, over in the Waccamaw, the Pawleys Island area. Kid doing the same thing, the police officer on that end, they're just being white kid, they're just being kids, they're growing up, no problem. Black kid does the same thing, and the kid's walking out in front of the school in shackles, not handcuffs. I'm talking about the feet, the hands, and everything tied up. And what part of that is that some of these officers are trying to make examples of these children, and they showcase them as they walk these kids out. And not only is it embarrassing, but it affects a kid's mental health. And we have to start talking about that part of it also, which is crazy. But they really need to go ahead and get rid of SROs, which is something that another organization that I'm a part of, we were able to make that happen over in Arlington, Virginia. School districts have officially taken SROs out, and that position is made for I forgot what the name of the title is, but it's more for student resources, so that they have some type of counselor instead of a disciplinarian person.
I have a follow-up question. Oh,
just real quick, Dale. I just wanted to just add a comment, and I would, if anyone would like to respond to my comment, that's fine. But I think with what I just showed with the decision that was just handed down, the striking down of this disorderly conduct law or disturbing schools law, I think I want this to be an object lesson for many of the groups, not only here in Horry County, but all throughout the nation that deal with young people. We talk about the how mentoring is vital, how tutoring is vital. We talk about helping especially Black children develop respectability and comportment. We talk about all of these things, and I think there's a lot of emphasis, too much emphasis, I think, on fixing the perceived deficiencies of young people as opposed to fixing the real deficiencies in the system. Okay. All throughout Horry County schools, we have different organizations that tell our students to, pull your pants up, Don't be, and teach them about conflict resolution, and teach them about, style of dress and dining decorum and all these other things, when the whole time the law itself was racist. The law itself was unconstitutional and biased. Okay. So no amount of comportment or respectability would have made that law any less racist or any less constitutional. The law had to be thrown out. And I want people to understand that. I want people who deal with kids to understand that it's not just about, fixing young people. It's about dealing with a system where racism and bias is inherent. And until you fix that, no amount of respectability, comportment, or anything like that is going to be worth anything. So that was my soapbox moment. Is it, if no one has a response, I'll
No, I
Yeah.
right there with you. We have the position that we're in is we have to wait for legislators to make new laws or take old laws off the books, but they're relying on the next election and votes. And as soon as they say we need to, do whatever, any part of redoing, destroying, rebuilding the criminal justice system, they lose votes. So they can't say it, they can't vote for it. And so it doesn't change. So these kids who are getting educated on all of these nice things, when they get pulled over by the cops, none of that matters. And we've seen, unfortunately, too many times youths, especially African-American youths, being, harmed, beaten, shackled, killed, no matter what all this stuff is. And I don't think that our current legislators are going to do a damn thing about it. It's not to their benefit personally.
Absolutely. I agree.
I'm sorry, Dale. Go ahead.
Yeah, my follow-on question, when you're talking about the removal of police in Arlington County, Virginia, I had a question about the statistics. What are the statistics for increased juvenile arrests since the addition of police officers in the school? And I'd be even curious to see whether there's any statistics, what happens when you take them out? How does that affect arrests? And along with those statistics, how many days are missed by students when they happen to be arrested, like getting processed and things like that? I mean, I heard they could come out, but, I guess now that you have an arrest, that's kind of a harder thing to sweep under the rug with being able to go back to school. So how do we quantify, now that we have police in school, now there's more arrests for juveniles, and now these kids are missing more time in school. Now, because that's another cost to the community, because now there's less days that these kids can be educated.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Unfortunately, I'm not able to give you numbers. I do actually have some data about it, but I don't have it on hand right now about what they were before. Now, the removal of the SROs happened only a few months ago. This was back during the summer, right before school. So we don't have any conclusive numbers right now as to if we have seen a change in lost amount of time for students and things of that nature. But what I can say is that there is a financial loss to the school whenever kids are arrested. So, for example, and I'll use Georgetown again as an example because it's real and it's one that I know of. So they have alternative school. We have a Howard Alternative School, and what happens is, depending upon what happens, a child is in the regular school and they qualify to go to alternative school. So while that child is in the alternative school, the money that follows that child, and I want to think it's about $2,500 a head or per child, is removed from that school and sent to the alternative school. And supposedly they try to do everything they can to keep the child in the school. And I think part of it is they try to keep the child in the school so that they can keep the money. So long as the child is able to be in school for so many days, they're able to keep the money even if the child is expelled. So I know that doesn't quite answer your question, but and that hurts. It hurts because I'm also an advocate for teachers. We're already short staffed to begin with. And when you remove money from schools and they really need it, I'm a treasurer on the PTO, and we're constantly trying to raise money for teachers because they cut stipends for them to even buy supplies for the classroom. So you remove money, kids get expelled, that type of thing. It just hurts not only the student, it hurts the teachers who really at this point are not getting paid anything.
And I think in Horry County, I don't know if it was this year or last year, there was an issue where the school district didn't want to pay for the school resource officers. And if they weren't going to pay for them, the school wasn't going, the county police would not provide resource officers. So the school district went to pay for private, like security officers of some sort. I'm not sure how that actually shook out, but money once again, who gets what? Part of the industry of this.
Good point.
So I want to move. We have we're winding down with the discussion. So I have a few more questions, and I know Dale has some, and want to take some questions from the audience. If you're watching us right now live, feel free to type in your questions, and we'll ask your questions while we're live on the air. But my next question is, when it comes to the expansion of the system of mass incarceration, there tends to be this emphasis from many people, working class folks in general, and specifically people of color, to kind of put the blame just on the Republicans or the right wing or conservatives. But is where are the flaws in that? Is that a mistake to say, oh, this is a Republican issue? That's for anyone.
I'll go ahead and grab it right quick. The Republicans are easy targets, but I think all politicians are looking at the next election. They want to get re-elected, and as long as a issue helps them, they will back that. Something like this, changing, adjusting, destroying, rebuilding the criminal justice system, they don't want to touch it. They say they do to try to get votes, but to actually, work to get rid of cash bail, I don't think they're going to do it. I mean, it's dangerous politically, regardless of your party, I think.
I think
I'm sorry, go ahead, Evan.
No, I'm just piggybacking off of what Bob said. I think it's everybody's issue. It's something that we need to pay close attention to. And many times when things affect us, we try to put a Band-Aid on it because we don't even know exactly how to attack it. And sometimes people when they don't know how to attack it, then they don't really have a way of going about trying to alleviate the issue. But, just like in South Carolina, you have the governor here won't even push forward with trying to pass the hate crime bill, and that's something. And I know we're talking about bail, but there's a direct correlation with it all, because when hate crimes are done, they're usually done by someone who wants to show some type of superiority or some type of authority, and they're not being punished the way that to the highest level of the law, there has to be accountability with everyone.
So I'll just say that I want to be very clear to the audience that I'm not suggesting that we give the Republicans a pass or conservatives a pass on the expansion of mass incarceration. I'm not saying that. What I'm suggesting is, through this question, is that the mass incarceration system can be attributed both to Republicans and to Democrats as well. They're both just as responsible. One is just as responsible as the other for the expansion of the system of mass incarceration. Even just recently, we saw the failure of the Democrats to push through that George Floyd Act. Okay, and that's a disgrace. Especially with the type of political climate that we have now. But I think it would be said that one of the enduring legacies of Bill Clinton and Joe Biden is that they both played a serious role in the expansion of mass incarceration and the development of the punishment bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just as responsible. Even Joe Biden was even to the right of Ronald Reagan when it came to mass incarceration. So, we need to be very clear, and, we need to be very clear that this is, a bipartisan effort. Locking up Black people is a bipartisan effort. That's the one thing they can agree on.
Yes.
All right. So,
also, just to add to what you're saying, I think there's a breakdown in, again, the original putting money in things that fix the cause. And of course, that's policy, but a lot of that's also going to be in, it's amazing that the amount of people that are in jail because of mental health issues, we have to identify those as problems and have solutions to them. The pandemic, of course, the problem has always been there, but of course, the pandemic has highlighted that is a major issue, that mental health is very hard to come by. And if a person even wants to seek it out, there's a long wait. Maybe it's not availability. There's stigma behind it. And other reasons that people are in jail. Those things need to be identified. And if we really identified problems along with fixing policies, then we're able to work on those things. And then by default, what would happen is prison systems would shrink by default. But like Jennifer said, the system is working exactly the way that it should. They don't want it to shrink. That's a money thing for them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm so glad that you mentioned Bill Clinton, because he really gets a pass so much more often than he should. He contributed so much to the current state of things right now. But I also just want to say that, when we talk about things like, when you hear politicians say that they're going to reform something, right? They make these promises, these campaign promises, like especially liberals and Democrats and whatever, like we'll reform this and we'll reform the prison system and the criminal justice system or whatever system it is that they're talking about. And then maybe they'll pass some small legislation or whatever, and then they'll get to say, look what we did. Look, we're for the people. We helped you. We passed this thing, right? Mm-hmm. But the reality is that if you continue passing reform legislation, if you continue making reforms, you're putting a Band-Aid on a giant problem, and it doesn't actually solve anything. And this, again, is by design. They don't want to solve this problem because they are profiting off of this problem. So why would they want to change it? It is not in their best interests to do anything to change the current system right now. It is not in their best interest. And so they actively use smoke and mirrors to make the public believe, look, we're making these reforms and we sign these bills today, and they have their giant pens and shit. And it makes me so mad because it is so truly just so false they're not changing anything. They're just making us believe that they're changing something, and then they get reelected again and again, and nothing ever changes, and we're still here. We are still here having these conversations. Like, why is it this way? And it's like, because no one with the power to change it has any interest in changing it. And you're absolutely 100% correct when you say that that is on every side of politics and every politician. Democratic presidents could have done so much to change some of the things that are currently problematic, but none of them did, really, in a real way. So it gets me heated. But thanks for letting me rant on that.
No, it's just fine. I know we're running down on time. I want to, and we're kind of jumping around, which is fine. I want to ask one question, at least one question, from Geechee Ya, who couldn't be with us tonight because he's celebrating his birthday. So we want to say happy birthday to Geechee Ya.
Okay? Happy birthday!
When we go backstage, we'll sing happy birthday to you, okay? But he asked a question about women being incarcerated as well. And his question is as follows. The female incarcerated population stands over 7 times higher than 1980. And in parentheses, he has more than 60% of women in state prisons have a child under the age of 18. What do you believe? What do you believe is making these numbers go up like this? Whoever wants to take that one.
I'll do a first bit of it. I think drugs and domestic violence are 2 big pieces of it. From the mid 80s, when crack hit the street, we saw women getting involved with drugs where we really hadn't in these numbers before. So in terms of possession and sales, excuse me, going in, drug crimes, the numbers of years are usually far higher than the actual scope of the crime. Domestic violence, there was a change in a lot of states' laws, and I think it was the early 90s, where instead of one party bringing the charge against the other, the police would have to arrest somebody at the scene, whoever they thought was the aggressor, and the state would bring the domestic abuse charge. And so whichever party had more scars, more, I can see this person was getting punched, they arrest the other person. And so women were getting charged more with domestic violence. Think of the case in Florida fairly recently about a woman firing a gun in the air to protect herself and kids from her abuser, convicted of attempted murder. People got behind her to get her out, but she did time in prison. Also, there was a young woman in Tennessee, I believe, who was being trafficked. She killed her abuser, sent to prison for life, I think. Yeah. She was since let out. So I think those are the 2 big ones that really saw the surge in women being incarcerated.
I would like to add to that both of those things that you just said, though, are also really, you can tie down to a single thing, and that is the criminalization of poverty. And that's honestly the umbrella that encompasses all of those things. The crack epidemic of the 80s, first of all, was, as we all on this panel know, of course, was invented. It's just, there was no crack epidemic. It was our government and our politicians telling us that we needed to be afraid of people making crack and selling crack and doing crack, and that it was so much worse than powder cocaine, when in reality it is chemically the same thing. It was cheaper, it was easier to make. And so this is that where that war on drugs comes in, really, and starts to continue to criminalize people of color and poverty in general. is by inventing an epidemic, a problem that didn't really exist, and then criminalizing the people who you knew were already going to be the people that you were targeting. And then also the fact that we lack we completely really lack any type of social safety net for women who find themselves in abusive relationships. So in order to get out of those situations is incredibly difficult. And especially if you have no money, or if you are being abused in a situation where someone else is in control of your money, the thought of taking your children and risking that when there are no social services to really help you in any real way, it becomes very problematic and very dangerous for a lot of women. And so I think those two answers are definitely correct, but I also think that the overall answer to that question is the continued criminalization of poverty. And that's why that increase in women being incarcerated, I think, is evident.
Ebony, would you like to add on?
I think they laid it out.
All right, very good. Very good.
I would like to add on, though, that's a little bit different, is that, in addition to numbers, which don't lie, in addition to, all the many different cases time and time again that allude to everything that we said just now, that it creates then more of a need for having bail fund. So it's a crazy cycle here, but we're asking folks to go ahead and donate. Even if it's only but a few dollars, go ahead and donate. If you have questions, reach out to us on our website there. Someone will get back in touch with you. So we're asking for donations, but getting back to what you were saying, Asafo, there's a lot of propaganda. I thought when I was a kid and I heard about Black on Black crime, I thought it was real. I mean, I was a kid. So when I was old enough to understand, there is no such thing as Black on Black crime. It was something that's put out there, and people used to say in it, because nobody ever talked about Hispanic on Hispanic or Asian on Asian or white on white crime. We don't talk about it. But when you start looking at the numbers, actually, it's a higher percentage per capita, I think, in the white community. So if I sat here and said, well, look at all the white on white crime, they'd be looking at me like I'm crazy. So we're almost kind of brainwashed sort of society in a way that we view things in a certain way. Just like how we sort of live in a sexist society. We lived in a racist society. There's even race within race, and I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but it's just something that I noticed, that dark-skinned Black people probably get a little bit more hate than the light-skinned ones. And that's also very problematic to add to adding more fuel to this fire. That's all I have to say.
I would, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was saying that's all I had to say about that.
Well, I mean, you raised an interesting point. I think within the one thing that, and I'm constantly telling this to even the white leftist groups and organizations, or white liberal groups and organizations, that one of the more forgotten or skipped over aspects of things, what's happening in the Black community, is the fact that there's a stark class dynamic within the Black community, just like any other community. And there was an example of what I'm talking about is the fact that the Federal Reserve came out with data in 2019 or 2020, I'm not sure, I don't have it in front of me, that indicated that the majority of the wealth that the Black community, that Black people have in this country, the minimal wealth that exists in Black America, is actually held in the hands of a small elite group of Blacks, while the overwhelming majority of Black people are wealthless. Okay, those class differences matter, and they also matter in the realm of criminal justice as well, because one of the more forgotten, looked over aspects of the rise of mass incarceration is the complicity of the Black bourgeoisie and the Black misleadership class in the implementation of draconian and racist laws in the Black community. There's a great book by James Foreman Jr. called Locking Up Our Own. Okay, Crime and Punishment in Black America. I recommend that everyone reads this book. Okay, it talks about the role that the Black misleadership class played in the implementation of racist laws and what have you. So I just want to be very clear about that. We're gonna go, as we wrap up, we're gonna go to the comments, see if there's any comments or questions anyone will have in the chat. Dale, is there anything you want to add?
No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing with us your organization, and hopefully this inspires other communities to do the same thing. And surely they'll be able to reach out to you guys, just like with the National Bail Fund.
Yep.
All right, so we're let's see here. Brother Kufu says peace to the fam. Okay, peace, brother. We have a question from Geechee. I wonder if bail fund organizations are in solidarity. Are all abolitionists in ideology and practice?
I love that question, and he knows why, and you know why. No, absolutely not. They are not all in solidarity. There are vast differences in ideology among bail funds. The National Bail Fund is very much about abolition, and some of the bigger bail funds that you see in very large cities like Minneapolis or Philadelphia really also are very clear about the abolitionist stance that they take. I think when you get down to more community level, local level bail funds, taking big stances on things, I think can scare people sometimes. And so we have seen quite a bit of difference in the ways that other community bail funds that are about our size have approached this issue. We are an abolitionist fund in that we would love to be rendered unnecessary. I wish that we didn't need to have this bail fund. And if there's anything that we can do in terms of policy or talking to anybody about why we need to abolish cash bail because it is a racist and classist system, I think our board and our bail fund is all about that.
Okay,
so that's an excellent question. Thank you.
So thank you, Geechee, for that. So let's see here. One more thing here. Devon Teet. Okay, race first. Okay. All right, so as we wrap up, I just want to one more time go over the Venmo and the Cash App for the Horry County Bail Fund. Our Venmo is at Horry Bail Fund, and Cash App is $Horry Bail Fund. And our website is horrybailfund.org. horrybailfund.org. Okay, you can see it going across the screen at the bottom. Okay. So I want to express my appreciation to the my group, the Horry County Bail Fund, Free Horry County Bail Fund, also my group, the Barter and Build Think Tank, for putting on this panel discussion. We thank everyone who stuck it out with us. We've been plagued with technical difficulties, so we want to thank in absentia Valerie. We want to thank Ebony. We want to thank Deontay, and we want to for their participation as well. Want to thank you, both you and Jennifer and Bob, for your participation. Are there any last remarks you want to share with us?
I just want to say thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and I think it can do a lot to help the bail fund get moving. So thank you all.
Thank you as well. Ebony is so much better at this than I am. I get caught up in the in the conversation and I forget what we're doing sometimes. But we really need people to donate. We can't bail anyone out because we don't have any money. And so that was the point of this, and I forgot to make that point for most of the night. But it's true. And if for instance, right now, if we get some request that through our website, which is what you can do if you have someone who is a loved one that you would like to ask for bail assistance for. If we get a request through our website tonight, as far as I know, I haven't been checking, I don't think that we can bail anyone out yet. And so we need those donations to be able to make this bail fund an actual bail fund. And I know it's asking a lot, and I know that that it's I hate asking for money, but it really is for such a good cause, and I think we've tried to demonstrate that tonight. So if you've got anything that you can help us with, I really it truly would go to helping bail people out, and we just want to try to sustain this and make it as influential as possible for our community. So thank you to anyone who is considering donating or has donated. Again, if you have someone that you would like bail assistance for, go to our website. There's a form to fill out just with whatever information you know about it. And if we have the ability, if we have the funds, we'll absolutely do what we can for them. So thank you all for having us on. I appreciate it. It's a good board. I think it's a great board for a bail fund.
So we're, I just want to just add that, every dime that comes to us goes to bailing people out. We don't put any money toward administration. We don't put any money towards overhead. This is not a profit-making venture for us. We're doing this as volunteers. We're volunteering our time and efforts and energy, and we're just trying to make a small change to the extent that we can make a change, and also contribute to a larger movement to deal with some of these issues. So we thank everyone for listening. Our monthly lecture will be next Wednesday, and I will be lecturing on the Black bourgeoisie, the insidious stumbling block to Black power. So I'll be lecturing on that on next Wednesday, the 20th. The 20th at 6 p.m. Yes, next Wednesday, the 20th at 6 p.m. I'll be lecturing on the Black bourgeoisie, the insidious stumbling block to Black power. So with that said, we wish everyone a good night. We thank you for listening, and peace.
Thank you.